Apple's announced new everything!
But is it worth getting excited about? Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm here with Alex Kidman, a man whose doctor advised him against swallowing Apple's larger tablets. Alex, what's new in tech?
Both Optus and Vodafone have come out with new high-end contract phone plans, costing around $130 each, and with 20 gig of data per month. Vodafone's deal is slightly more generous than Optus's, at $5 less and with 20 gig guaranteed, whereas Optus's relies on you signing up before the end of December.
Lenovo is going hard in the hybrid gadget space, unveiling a range of new tablets at the IFA Technology Show in Berlin, along with a Microsoft Surface-style tablet designed to replace a notebook. Unlike Microsoft Surface, Lenovo includes the keyboard in the price.
The internet recently went mad for Sphero's latest toy, a droid based off the upcoming Star Wars film called BB-8. And here he is, and isn't he cute? Now, let's all say it together. This is the droid you're looking for.
Australia's free-to-air broadcasters are slowly losing their grip on our viewing habits, according to television blog TV Tonight. Its latest user survey found that a growing number of Australians are turning away from live television, not just late at night, but also during prime time, preferring time-shifted content, streaming services like iView, or subscription services like Netflix. So Alex, Apple's finally taken wraps off the new iPhones. Do you like what you see?
Well, look, yes and no. There's not a whole lot of surprises here. I mean, if you look, I've got an iPhone 6 here, and it's not as though this magically became junk, because the S upgrades have always been the, look, here's something that's a bit faster, it's a bit nicer, the camera's a bit better, we're claiming slightly better battery life, but, obviously wait and see on that one.
It's always an incremental upgrade.
Yeah, it's always that kind of, that little bounce upgrade, so that if you didn't get the 6S makes sense, but if you did, I'm not going to be wholly convinced that it's a huge new step forward, given the few new features that they're packing into the 6S and the 6S Plus.
Yeah. So it's this new touch system. Is it Touch 3D? I think that's kind of the main thing that's different between the 6S and the 6 in terms of hardware.
Yeah, look, well, that and the camera, but the 3D touch thing, I mean, it's interesting. It's the evolution of the Force Touch thing that you get on MacBook trackpads and that you get on the Apple Watch, so you can push down for certain context-sensitive items or to make a certain screen element pop up, that kind of thing. And, look, not necessarily a bad feature, but obviously something that's going to have to be programmed for.
Yeah.
So for the moment, you'll see it on Apple's first-party apps, obviously, first, because they've known about it for ages, and then others will potentially bring it in, but obviously you've got to figure, if you're an app developer, well, if I develop something that is 3D touch capable, well, then I'm only developing for the 6S and the 6S Plus, not for all the other existing devices. So I think that will remain a niche until there's a reasonable amount more older iOS devices made obsolete by time or future iOS upgrades.
So at least another year, because a lot of people upgrade every second year. I'm like that, so I had the 5, I skipped the 5S, I've got the 6, I'll skip the 6S. So you'd wait at least another year until people who've hung on to their 6 go for the 7 or whatever we see, which you would assume would still have that, and then you start to get your critical mass of users.
Exactly so. And I mean, it's also worth pointing out, of course, Apple's pricing these things as premium devices. The very top end 6S Plus is going to tip the scales at over $1,500.
And have they upped the storage in them? What are we up to today? Is it
We're still, the top end is still 128 gig. Now, that $1,500 price point, it isn't cheap. An awful lot of that has to be laid at the feet of the fact that the Australian dollar's collapsed so spectacularly recently.
Yes.
It's actually, after conversion
us.
and GST and so on, it's actually cheaper than the outright US price, unless you're in a no-tax state. And of course, it's worth reminding people, because this always bloody comes up. No, they don't sell for $199 in the US. That's the carrier subsidized price. They are actually marginally cheaper here, but they're still a very expensive phone, both of them. They're still a fairly significant investment, as are competing large-scale devices from the likes of Samsung.
So you said the camera was the other big change. What have we seen there? Is it just a resolution bump? Or?
They've bounced it up to 12 megapixels, and they've got this kind of pseudo-animated GIF thing happening where it'll capture stuff before and after, which is not bad, but again, it feels like that little gimmicky kind of thing, because if it's an iPhone-only thing, while yes, Apple does sell a lot of iPhones, they're a very popular smartphone, you're not necessarily going to share it across everything anyway. I think that's a feature that'll come and go. It'll be really fascinating to get some hands-on time with one of these and work out whether or not they've managed to then jump ahead of the likes of Samsung, who've done some really impressive stuff, but also LG and even Sony with their newly announced cameras. So Adam, there's also a new Apple TV, although this isn't a panel TV, this is still a set-top box. What's new and exciting?
Yeah, well, as you say, I don't think we're ever going to see an Apple television. Nobody's making any money selling televisions. Why the hell would Apple want to get into that market when they can sell a nice little set-top box? So your new Apple TV is not actually that different. I think it's more exciting from a games perspective than from a home entertainment perspective. I think from a home entertainment perspective, what people would have been thinking is, I want Ultra HD, I want to watch Ultra HD Netflix. Nah, not there. Not going to happen. And I think it's because Apple doesn't offer Ultra HD content, and they don't really want to give Netflix a shot in the arm when Apple's thinking about bringing out its own streaming service maybe next year.
It's not as though any of us, or many of us, have a connection that's going to support Ultra HD, though,
Well,
to be fair.
yeah, but in Australia, no. But in the US, more people would, and Apple doesn't give a stuff about people in Australia. So, yeah, you could see how there would be an argument made for that. And it only has an HDMI 1.4 port on the back, which means that while it could do Ultra HD, it's not going to do Ultra HD with HDR, which is a high dynamic range that people like Netflix and Amazon Instant Video offer to put that extra quality. So in terms of the high-end home entertainment, it's not running the latest and greatest, and I can see why some people might be annoyed about that, but you've got to understand that Apple doesn't sell you products for your benefit, it sells you products for its benefit.
It's all, totally, it's all about the
Yes.
Apple bottom line.
Yes.
So I take it then you're not taken with the idea of talking to Siri and getting her to do content searches.
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. Is there purely from a home entertainment perspective, you might be disappointed with it. What you might be excited about is that it now has access to part of the App Store. So I can hear millions of people going, Plex, 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 give me Plex. That's what I want. If I can run Plex on the Apple TV and maybe VLC and Flickster and a few other video-focused home entertainment apps, then I will be excited. But we've got to wait and see about that.
See, that side of it doesn't grab me as much, simply because to a large extent you can already do that if you've got other Apple hardware.
True.
If you've got an iPad, if you've got an iPhone, and you've got a third-gen Apple TV, you can use AirPlay streaming, and whilst, yeah, it's AirPlay streaming, it doesn't always work smoothly. This is technology, things exist to frustrate you.
Yes.
But it works, it's there, that kind of functionality is there. What I was getting at more there was this idea that you're going to say to Siri, you know, find me every movie with Danny Trejo that exists.
But how often are you really going to want to do that? I still, I don't use Siri
anyone
on
who
my
doesn't want
iGadgets.
to do that has suspect taste, in my view. But leaving that aside,
that small thing
I think
aside.
the bigger problem here, locally in Australia, is going to be that the content services are probably not going to be on board with this by the time it launches. So it might be a great feature in the States, but here, is it going to know what stands
Well,
got? Is it
initially
going to know what
in
Presto's
America,
got?
it
I doubt
only works with a few services. It was Netflix and Hulu. We have Netflix. We don't have Hulu. HBO Now, which we don't have. And then I think Apple's own store. I think they were the only ones at launch. But the thing is, at least with the existing Apple TV, it's not very hard to trick it into thinking it's in America. You don't even have to run a VPN or anything. You just change the thing to tell it. Just change the setting. So it might not be that hard to use some of those features. But I don't use Siri on my iPhone. I think Siri is a novelty. I know some people do. I don't. And every lounge room device I've ever used that you can talk to, I've kind of decided it's a novelty and worn off. A little bit on the Xbox One. There are a couple of things where it's easier to say, Xbox, do this, than reach the remote control. How often I would actually want to talk to Siri. But the thing is that it does make up for not having a QWERTY keyboard. It's not so much that I want to say, Siri, show me, all the funny movies from the 80s. But Siri, I want to watch Die Hard 2. And rather than having to use the little remote control and go peck through the on-screen keyboard...
DIE space
yes,
HA. Yeah,
I know
exactly.
that the
No,
Apple
I know
TV supports Bluetooth keyboards, but I don't have one set up for it because I don't use it that way that often. But to be able to say, Siri, launch Netflix, I want to watch Archer and not have to go blah, blah, blah. That is the way I would use it for finding specific things. So I can see where some people would be excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, the gaming side of things, which you were also alluding to, is an interesting one. I'm more of a gamer than you are, and I'm cautious about this. There's a couple of big name franchises that they've said will launch with the Apple TV, things like Disney Infinity, for example, which I'm quite hooked on at the moment. But at the same time, the Apple market has always played more towards that kind of casual, low-cost sphere. I don't know. I don't get the feeling from this that they're really pitching directly at the heart of Sony or Microsoft.
Oh no! If anyone should be worried about this, it's Nintendo. The same people that went out and bought a Wii are the same people who might be interested in this. If you're playing, I don't know, Call of Duty on a PlayStation 4, or I don't even know if that game runs on that console, but you know what I mean. If you're playing serious games on serious consoles, you're going to laugh at this thing, and even Apple knows that, and it's not the people they're trying to win. But if you're, I don't think you'll see a lot of those high-end games get ported across in the way that some of those first-person shooters turned up on the Wii, even when you wouldn't think they'd be Wii. Apple's got
very
enough
poorly,
of
but yes, they
did.
did.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to try and run Call of Duty on an Apple TV. And the other thing is, I don't think that you'll see Steam there, for example, because Apple wants to be the Steam of games. That I couldn't see them putting Steam on there, whereas for some people that would seal the deal, especially because I think we're still waiting for Steam's own set-top box. If this thing, just like I said, if it runs Plex, I'll buy it. Some people would say, well, if it's got Steam on it, I'll buy it. I don't think that's going to happen. So, Alex, I hear Apple's got you on bigger tablets these days.
Well, Apple's trying to get everyone on bigger tablets. Its big iPad announcement of the morning was the iPad Pro, a 12.9-inch iPad, so a much, much larger iPad device with an eye towards productivity users. This is something that Apple's had a bee in its bonnet about forever.
Yeah.
The idea that the iPad was much more than just a content consumption device, that you'd use it in creative ways. Now, I don't disagree that you can use an iPad in creative ways. I will put my hand up and say, yeah, I've written the occasional thing on an iPad, but typically it's been when there hasn't been a laptop to hand.
I'm the same.
Because I prefer the flexibility of that kind of model. And the iPad Pro is interesting, but I think it's going to be a bit of a tough sell.
But it's one of the big things is that you can attach a keyboard to it, right?
Yeah.
So it's starting to look like a Microsoft Surface.
Apple doesn't want you to admit that. They had Microsoft on stage and everything. No, look, seriously, this is the Apple Surface.
Yes.
Let's be honest here, and it's a Surface. It's a Surface Pro or a Surface 3. It's not a Surface RT. Let's not swear.
No, it is a Surface RT though. That's my argument. If it was a Surface Pro, it'd bloody run Mac OS. I don't want this stupid thing to be an iPad. I want a Mac that I can use like a Surface Pro 3. That'd be fantastic. But Apple doesn't see it that way. This is the Surface RT to me.
Actually, you're probably right. Yeah. Now that you say that, you are probably right. And it's in some ways it's not hard to see why. Apple makes most of its money off iOS these days.
Yeah.
It's not that Mac OS isn't profitable, but iOS is so much more profitable. Yeah. So it's kind of this I think is that little wedge of here's where Apple sees the future.
Yeah. Well,
and it's not shifting. It's shifting away from that Mac OS model, and it's shifting towards these controlled devices. But right now, buying a device right now, and they haven't announced Australian pricing, but based on the US pricing, they're going to run somewhere between about 1,300 to about 1,900 Australian dollars, presuming the Australian dollar doesn't tank any further before
And just
October.
like the Surface, the keyboard is extra?
Just like the Surface, the keyboard is extra.
Yeah.
The stylus is extra.
Yeah.
The screen repairs, I'm sure, are going to be horrendous when you drop this thing. Yeah. So just don't drop an iPad Pro. That's kind of terrifying.
It's interesting that Apple had to get into this space, though. And I was in IFA at IFA in Berlin last week, and I was talking to Lenovo, and they've just brought out something that looks suspiciously like a Surface Pro 3, but has the keyboard included and a couple of other nice features. And they were telling me that their hybrid 2-in-1 sales, like their convertible yoga notebooks and their Surface style tablets, are actually their growing market now, and that's as big as tablets for them. PC sales are falling, tablet sales are slowing down and falling as well. It's actually this hybrid space, and so I've kind of I almost wrote a story the other day that said, how long can Apple afford to not play in the hybrid space? Because this is where the growth is coming from. Everybody's got a computer, everybody's got a tablet. Unlike their smartphone, they don't replace their tablet every 2 years. This is the sweet spot in the middle. And so I'm not that surprised. Well, I am a bit surprised. If Steve Jobs was still here, I'm not sure if we'd be doing this, because Steve was always like, this is perfect, and if you don't like it, you're an idiot. The new Apple's a bit more open-minded. Steve could be astonishingly hypocritical. Oh, yeah.
This is
really? You noticed?
Right
I thought
now.
it was just me.
You will never need photos on an iPod. You would never want to play games on an iPod.
Yes.
Steve would change, just as Apple does, its view of what perfect is as market needs
and then double speak you into thinking that you always wanted it.
Yeah, it's a space that they need to be in. Although, while you're right that tablet sales worldwide are dipping, Apple's in the weird position that it's the one manufacturer of laptops that's managed to actually increase sales and increase market share year on year out.
Yeah.
And that's not just, we came from nothing, so any increase is a little. They've actually managed to make some significant money in this space. And it's really, I think it is going to be kind of interesting to see who jumps at this thing, who actually gets excited by it versus buying for what would be the same money, either the MacBook Air or the MacBook, even within that kind of Apple faithful crowd. Because I think there's a bunch of Windows people, especially the Surface users, who are just going to go, well, this is their version of the Surface and I'm not buying it. But they probably never would have. The Apple faithful, on the other hand, now have this kind of choice of, well, do you want a laptop? Do you want the iPad Pro? And while, I want some hands-on time with this thing, I want to kind of get an appreciation of what they think it can do, I can't see myself jumping into that particular market, into that particular space anytime soon. That just about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold. If you've got any comments, hit us up on YouTube, via our Facebook page, or on Twitter.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. Apple, what's new in tech? I got so close. Your name's not Apple.
No, it's not.
All right.
They haven't bought that yet.
Let's try again. So, Apple.
Stop calling me Apple!
That's bad. I'm Adam Turner, and this is Apple Kidman.
Right. Serious face.
All right.